I don't know if I'm being slightly slow here, but I just don't understand why you can't give a figure. You said there that, Labour can't give a figure for the same reason that the unions can't give a figure, because they're involved in the negotiation. But you're not involved in the negotiation. I don't understand why you can't give a figure on what pay rise you would give to public sector workers.
Well, you've got different issues in different disputes. I mean, part of the NHS dispute is very clearly about workload.
OK, so let's talk about specific then. Would you give nurses a 10% pay rise?
Realistically, the top opening offer, no, we probably wouldn't be able to meet that, but we would negotiate, and fundamentally we have a much more compelling message about those workload problems because we've got that plan to abolish the non-dom rule for the super rich and therefore use that revenue over £3 billion to vastly increase the numbers of doctors, nurses, midwives in the system. So that would be part of the negotiation. But I don't think if the people who are directly involved in disputes can understandably come on television and give specific figures, it's not helpful, frankly, for us to do. But we're very serious about understanding the burdens people are facing and the fact the government has to recognise that. And the big difference, and you heard it there from my opposite number, Grant Shapps, is that the government, frankly, rather than want to solve these disputes, they want to use them as excuses for the poor state of public services in the country after being in power for 13 years. They want to use those disputes to say that's why public services aren't working. Everyone in the country knows, even when there aren't days when industrial action is taking place, whether it's the railways or the health service, things are not as they should be, and that is the responsibility of the government.
I think everyone would, agree that there is a lot of strain on public services at the minute, but it does feel that that did give a bit of clarity there, that, look, you would get around the table, you'd negotiate on conditions and on pay as well, but 10% pay rises that match inflation would be unaffordable.
Well, look, the government often cites, for instance, the 1970s, where you saw essentially a series of pay negotiations in excess of inflation as people started to expect it. And, of course, that leads to the kind of spiral that ultimately diminishes living standards even further. But let's be clear, I mean, the average settlement in the private sector last year was 7%, well below the rate of inflation. It's just that the public sector settlement was even more significantly behind that. So I don't think working people in this country are being unreasonable, but they do expect their government to listen to the pressures they're under. They would like a little bit of responsibility from the government because, let's be frank, you could argue that the last 13 years have been one of the most disappointing periods in the entire economic history of the United Kingdom, and I don't see the government really being honest and frank about that. So
but Labour wouldn't be able to match the pay demands of public sector workers either.
Well, I think we could settle these disputes fairly quickly if the government were to stand down and give us a chance of doing it, because I think we fundamentally understand those issues around workload, burden. We talk about unprecedented levels of inflation, and that's right, but look at grocery inflation. I mean, it's 17% almost for a lot of people when they're going out doing their shopping, buying essential items for the household. So, of course, you see in those disputes incredible levels of turnout, of people, very strong feelings about it. They're simply reflecting, the position they're under. And I think many people, by the way, are looking at this and say, now you've got a Conservative government that's been in power now for the same amount of time as the last Labour government. Well, are they better off after 13 years of that Conservative government? And for nearly everyone in this country, the answer is no.